Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Engadget Podcast for the week of June 24th. My name is Tim Stevens. I'm the editor-in-chief of Engadget. Sitting to my left is the somewhat sweaty Mr. Brian Heater.
It's so hot outside.
To my right is the rather more composed Peter Rojas. Gentlemen,
I'm holding it together. But
good
Brian,
afternoon.
I think those things are mutually exclusive.
Brian, what are you hiding today? Nothing, man. Nothing's going on.
Nothing at all. It's been a sweaty week here in New York, and the forecast is
humid.
exactly the same.
I
for
was
next
saying
week.
that I was, I just did a moderated panel at CE Week, which is it's the perfect distance to where you can't take the subway or a taxi, but it's far enough to get you really, really sweaty.
You got to do the pedicab.
I've never done a pedicab, and I would feel bad enough doing a pedicab, but on a week like
The thing
that,
is, you have to tip a lot.
Yeah.
Especially on a sweaty
You
day.
don't see them wandering around the streets either. I mean, unless you're in Times Square.
I think they got to give up on days like today.
Have you seen the big guy who dresses like Wonder Woman and does they've got those. I think you can theoretically drink on them. It's like all the little stools that face inward.
Oh yes,
pedals,
yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah.
In Amsterdam, actually, I saw one. So interesting.
but
they've gone international.
Guy dresses like Wonder Woman and rides around Times Square.
They didn't have that in Amsterdam.
I bet they had some of that. You
That's
just had to go to the right neighborhood.
That's true. I did not go to that neighborhood, apparently. Boy, busy week. A lot of Windows talk, a lot of other stuff to talk about. But we want to talk about our event that was Monday night, which hopefully a lot of you got out to. We three certainly did and had a good time. 82 Mercer here in New York. We had the Engadget plus Gadget New York City meetup, our first inaugural event here or our first combined event in New York City.
Yeah.
It's really the first. I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it was the first combined event, really. The other one was
The
kind
Austin.
of...
Well, the Austin one was just a few weeks after the acquisition.
Yeah, so somebody walked around with some Engadget stickers and kind of put them up a couple places.
Yeah,
in the
that was a
wall.
little thrown together.
Although there were more Engadget editors there than Gadget.
At the Austin one?
Yeah.
Because people were in town for South by Southwest. Yeah.
And by more, I mean me and Zach.
Sirens outside as usual to commemorate the beginning of the podcast. So
I think Wonder Woman just passed
if
out.
you're playing the Engadget podcast drinking game, that means take a shot. So it was a good time. We had a lot of good panel discussions up on stage with some of our friends in the journalism industry and a couple of companies as well, and some demonstrations of some startups. And
Broke some exciting news about Samsung.
We absolutely did.
10-inch phone.
We had some famous
It's a lock.
rockers up on stage. We
It's
had a
pretty
little bit
much a
of
lock.
feedback. Yeah, we had a good time.
It was fun. And I think obviously the turnout was crazy. I mean, we had, I think, almost 2,000 people showed up, and it was a very disgusting, muggy
People
night.
standing outside,
So,
sweating
showing
away.
up early.
I felt pretty
too.
bad that it was such an unpleasant day.
You need some of those like mist. No, I guess Mister wouldn't really work in a hot.
You can't get Microsoft to buy everybody ice cream. Really?
People were handing out tacos. I think Outlook was handing out.
There was a Korean taco truck.
Yeah. Ice cream would have been better on that night.
Yeah, let's
Choco
have you eat
tacos.
this hot, spicy.
Aren't you supposed to eat hot food when it's hot outside? I've heard that before.
I don't
know
think
if
it
that's
makes
told
me
white.
sweat.
I
I
think
don't
people
know.
just trying to justify whatever.
They're
they
Korean
like.
tacos.
But,
People are always trying to justify their Korean tacos.
Yeah. But we do have a bunch more events for the rest of the year. We're going to be San Diego, July 19th during Comic-Con.
Just coming up soon.
You got the rooms for that already, I assume, right?
I figured some, but no. Brian, I thought you were on that.
We're staying in Encinitas.
We have a venue for that. We're going to be in Seattle at the end of August, on August 31st. We'll be in Boston October 10th, and then of course Expand comes to New York November 8th.
Got the schedule down packed, man.
And then I'm reading it.
Okay.
I should have.
I was just
San Francisco, December 5th,
Nobody knew.
and then. We'll be in Las Vegas for CES 2014.
And then expand in March. So
I know.
Yeah.
So we got a lot. And
Really
we're
never stops.
trying to get to as many different places as we can. I know every time we do an event, people complain about how we didn't come to their city.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of work to do these things.
We should do one of those contests where we put on an event in someone's living room. I think that'd be a really good contest.
I don't know. Having 1,500 people in your living room would really.
It's a tough thing too.
Take
Like
air
for a lot of
conditioning.
those, it's like the people who win that you don't necessarily want to be in their living room. The people who are that committed to it.
Fine.
Maybe.
Like, show us how not dangerous you are.
It's like, but like that was like an MTV thing in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
They had like Belinda Carlisle would play in your backyard.
Yeah,
or something
absolutely.
like that.
You'll probably get Belinda Carlisle for the next one of these.
I bet we could.
IK
You know what? I bet she's actually within our budget.
I think so.
These days.
We got Vernon Reed from Living Color.
Yeah, that was a pretty great show, man.
And Phil
too.
Collins' son.
Yeah.
No, it's
true. They were good.
They were good, yeah.
he's a genuine celebrity's son.
He sounds exactly like Phil Collins. He has an American accent, and when he sings, it's just you shut your eyes and it's Phil Collins.
Yeah.
or open them. Looks like them
no
too.
jacket required. That's the point.
It is the point. Also want to talk about Expand Success Story Xiphius, the winner of the inaugural Insert Coin competition, who was at the New York City event. They showed us the new design for their aquatic UAV, I guess is the best way to put it, the guy that floats around in your pool. They showed us a slightly redesigned device, and it has launched on Kickstarter. Let me see where they're at now for funding.
They've still got a ways to go last time I checked.
They do. They're at 22,000 after 3 days. That's not too bad. Total goal is $125,000, which is great. They showed a couple new tweaks to the design at Expand, one of which was a beer caddy, basically. You could have it float in your pool and bring you a can of beer.
I think that's really the breakthrough innovation right there. I think that's what's going to get people excited.
I'm not even a
about
drinker,
this.
and I can appreciate that use case.
Sure.
So
you could put you could put popcorn in there.
Good.
You could put.
Let's go down the whole list.
Let's put everything.
That's the rest of the podcast.
Put your cell phone in there. That seems safe enough.
Sure.
You could put a smaller drone inside. Have it swim around in there.
Lots of options. Certainly no shortage of options.
So I'll be hosting a special podcast after this podcast to go through all the things that'll fit in the space of Beer Cozy.
So they are off to a pretty good start. They're about a fifth of the way where they need to go. I think it's $200 to get your own Xiphius. $195. Oh, no, all the initial $195 backers are gone. So at this point, you need to spend $250 if you want to get your own aquatic drone.
I think part of the problem is that, I don't have a pool.
Yeah. Do you have a bathtub?
Nope.
Peter's out of this.
Yeah,
does your basement ever flood?
Yeah, no basement. But it'd be funny to bring this to a public pool and see how long until you get kicked out.
Yeah, probably not very long.
I think this is probably
with a camera
for people with well, you don't have any bodies of water. Right?
Yeah, we have a pond on our property. Yeah.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, you wanted something that's always taking
pictures. You
pictures.
gonna be reviewing this?
I guess I could. Yeah, I could be chasing frogs and
be,
toads around, and the turtles too. We launched the latest episode of the Engadget Show, episode 44, education-focused episode, which just came out really good. I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I'm actually legitimately proud of this one. I feel like we actually took a look at some important issues.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, watch it. There's we talked to Google, we talked to OLPC, Apple set us up with a class that has iPads. But to me, the really interesting story is actually the first one of the episode. This woman, Jackie Moore, was out in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pitched to us by SparkFun, who are also on the episode, along with Adafruit. And SparkFun's doing this 50-state tour with an RV, and they were talking about a stop that they had made when they were in Chicago. Met with Jackie, who, when they pitched it, they said it was an abandoned shopping mall, which isn't quite accurate, but it's kind of way out in the boondocks of Chicago by Midway Airport, and the bottom level of the shopping mall is pretty much abandoned. I think there's like a massage place and like a hair place down there, and then there's this little storefront called Level Up, which is where this woman, she worked in IT for a number of years and now is teaching inner city kids how to build robots. It's a pretty noble pursuit.
Yeah,
if there were any.
Pretty fun. I kind of wish that I had the opportunity to build robots when I was in school, but it's
too bad you had all the advantages of not growing up super poor in the inner city.
That's very, very true. But yeah, a lot of great stories in the episode. We also take a tour of the American Museum of Natural History, which I think I said correctly this time. That took a little bit to not say the Museum of Natural.
The Museum of
or
Natural
that too.
History.
And of course, John Roderick makes a special cameo appearance as ever.
Yep.
So
watch it. It's on the internet.
It is on the internet.
What else
it's
are you
free.
going to do with your time? It's absolutely
free. It is also totally free.
I don't think you even have to sit through any ads this time. Right?
Not many.
I think it's just right up there.
Or just download it. Ad-free, as ever.
Go to BitTorrent.
Microsoft's Build event is going on this week, or this is day 2, I believe, today. Yesterday was the keynote upon which Steve Ballmer dropped some more information about Windows 8.
Did he, though?
Sort of.
He didn't actually.
Well,
there wasn't really any new information.
There was some new information. We learned a couple new things.
There wasn't that much that we hadn't heard already.
Yeah, and we got the the preview was up when the keynote started. So there was, and this was we were monitoring it live, and we're disappointed by the relative lack of information. But I think
But it's not a. It is a developers conference, so it's
right.
not. I think a developers conference is not about like here's this crazy new stuff that's coming. It's really about
traditionally it hasn't been.
It traditionally hasn't been, and not that people haven't announced new things at developer conferences before, both Microsoft and Google and Apple. But I think it is more about like here's the stuff that you can. It's almost sort of like creating a sense of stability in the platform so that people can build stuff.
No, it is. I mean, and that's certainly who you're speaking to in that room. But obviously, the ante's been upped a little bit, and when you come right on the heels of I/O and WWDC, it's shifted. The model is shifted. Yeah. So people do expect to get some more information because you're speaking obviously to a room of developers, but you're also speaking to 60,000 people streaming online.
I mean, I think the biggest deal that Microsoft is doing is getting away from their regular cycle of updates to Windows, and now that we can expect a yearly update.
Was this a full year? I feel like it might even be a little less than a year. Was it like 8 months or something?
The fall of last year.
So when Windows 8.1 hits, it'll be a year.
Yeah,
so it makes sense that, and they're getting to a yearly cycle, and that's and that is I think a change for them. I mean, this isn't really a service pack. This is this is more along.
It's more akin to Apple.
Like what Apple does, and that's what consumers expect. And I think that, frankly, it's also what developers are coming to expect.
Well, I think what's really great about this is well, in some ways it's good, in some ways it isn't. But this is very clearly okay. So this is what was wrong with Windows 8, and here's what we're doing to address those problems. Like we took away these things that you've come to appreciate from the operating system, and we're putting them back in, and we're kind of. In a sense, it is a bug fix, but it's a very major bug fix with obviously new features.
Right. And we talked about the return of the start button. We talked about the enhanced control panel and a lot of other things as well. But they did give us some new information about the OS. 3D printing support, I think, is pretty interesting. So
I was going to say, I think it's a big deal.
Back in the day, every printer had its own custom driver, and the applications had to be supporting those individual printers. And it wasn't really until Windows kind of standardized the driver process for printers that ultimately they really caught on and grew to be a huge market. It's a little bit early, I think, to be doing that sort of thing for 3D printers. But ultimately, it's nice to be setting those APIs up in the beginning so that people like MakerBot and everybody else can start to come to some standards for these 3D printers. So that's interesting. We also got some updates on how big their App Store is. Steve Ballmer said, or about to be. Ballmer said they're approaching 100,000 apps, which I'm guessing he was counting last night and waiting and hoping that it would tick over 200,000.
They were going in there and just making up some little apps to try to push.
Everybody was probably downloading everything they possibly could. Hundreds of millions of downloads and 100,000, approaching 100,000 apps, which of course compares to 50 billion. I think Apple just said for iTunes
for downloads.
Yeah, for downloads.
Yeah, but this obviously they learned their lesson a while ago and are certainly moving in the right direction. And 100,000 or nearly 100,000, that's going to be more than most people will put on their phones, I'll say. That's a fair amount to choose from.
Yeah, certainly. And it's I think we're looking for acceleration here rather than.
Though I'd heard that most Windows 8 users were not installing any apps at all because they weren't really using that desktop. I think it was a different experience, and I think they had not really. That Microsoft have not done a good enough job of messaging that you can get new apps for that for the desktop there.
It's certainly changing the way that people find applications in a big way.
Yeah, and they I think what helped push them to that number is they just made it much easier to port stuff over there, which is probably why that sped up as quickly as it did.
A new Visual Studio 2013 is out, which has a very flat color scheme to go along with the rest of the OS. Probably not many people other than me care about this, but it does look pretty interesting, I think. A lot more visualization for debugging and that kind of thing, which could be interesting for devs. So if that's you, I think there's 5,000 beta keys which are probably long gone by now. Internet Explorer 11, we learned a lot about that. Interestingly, it supports WebGL, which previously Microsoft said they weren't going to support, so they've kind of turned around there, which is nice. MPEG Dash support too, and they showed that the HTML5 version of Netflix is already working in IE11 too, which is interesting.
Crazy, because like that's got to be the #1 use of Silverlight on the internet, right? Is Netflix? That has to be.
No,
Yeah,
but I
at
think
this point.
they're basically giving up on Silverlight.
So they're
Yeah.
they're killing it in their own browser. So
Well,
everybody
Microsoft
knows-
has. I don't know that they ever actually came out and said Silverlight's dead, but ultimately they've as much as said
it
that.
seems kind of deprecated at this point.
Yeah.
Well, I
it
mean,
certainly is.
certainly they are. I mean, there's a while there where clearly they had some really kind of under the table deals where like all of the Olympics were streamed in Silverlight, even though nobody had it installed at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Microsoft tried real hard, but ultimately, between Flash's domination and then ultimately HTML5 kind of making it obsolete, there's really
And
no need for it anymore.
smartphones killing a lot of.
And that too.
Yeah.
So yeah, ultimately, there's Silverlight. If you thought there was any reason to keep on there, not anymore. Bing for developers too. I was actually surprised that they didn't have a developer program.
Yeah,
I guess
I was like, this is something
yeah,
new.
because Bing, you see, integrated into a lot of apps and platforms, but they've actually finally just opened things up for any old developer who wants to bring
So it's been
the
a
power of
partnership
Bing.
mostly up till now.
Yeah. So I'm sure these APIs existed; they just weren't publicly available, but now they are. So you can do, web searching and some other intelligence based on Bing and bring it into your app. What sort of Bing intelligence would you like to bring into your app, Brian?
I'm glad you asked Brian, not me.
Yeah, no. I mean, they've actually done some. I mean, and we'll touch on this a little bit later, but they've done some really interesting things with mapping. I mean, have you used their? I can't think of the name, but their equivalent of Street View.
Yeah, the isometric overhead.
View Street.
Yeah, MS Street View. Yeah, no, they're doing some really interesting things with maps.
MS
I think
Street
they're
View
doing
Pro.
interesting things with visual search. Their video search is interesting as well. I mean, they're doing some cool things over there.
Yeah.
I always pick, every time I need free Wi-Fi in an airport, I end up picking Google, but I still think there's something to be said for Bing.
Yeah, I think Bing is definitely a nice operating system. I'm just very much in the Google ecosystem in a lot of ways, so I stay there. They also showed off OCR, optical character recognition, in Windows 8 as well, which is largely based on Bing technology too. So I think they took a picture of some Spanish text and they were able to translate it and have that spoken in English, which is kind of cool.
So they didn't say anything about Windows RT.
Not a thing.
I kept looking and maybe I missed something and thought I'd ask you guys, but nothing about Windows, a new version.
Honestly, they didn't talk much about Windows Phone either, though. It was really just
but I mean, I can
95%.
understand that, but I feel like to have no discussion about Windows RT, not even just to put out some BS numbers about numbers of apps or I mean you really have to wonder. I mean, whether this is just something that's going to be come the fall that it's just gone. And the next Surface, the next Surface is it's got Haswell and it only runs on the Pro version.
I think Microsoft has
despite the rumors about the Qualcomm stuff.
I think Microsoft has figured out a strategy that really works for them, and that strategy is to put a lot of money and resources into something, and if it doesn't take within the first year, to give up on it.
I mean, it's not a bad way to do things.
No.
Well, if you have the money.
Yeah, if you got the money, that's the thing.
But I feel like I mean, if you're a developer, I mean, why you would spend resources developing for Windows RT? I mean,
at this point,
I
don't know that anybody is.
Yeah. And we certainly didn't get any new Surface tablets as we thought we might, or anything on that regard either.
Really, nothing hardware at all.
I mean, I don't think the day's over, so there's always a
but
for
that would. I mean,
surprise.
he came out and he
I'm
showed
kidding,
off a
there's no
bunch of
chance.
pieces of hardware, and we did see them all already.
And day two, the keynote was entirely dev focused. So yeah, it's not happening from this event anyway. Not to say it can't happen later.
But again, it's it's a developer conference in the more traditional sense of a developer conference.
Indeed, it is. Developers.
Rapid release.
They showed 3D imagery in the new Windows 8.1 Maps app. So just like Mavericks is getting a Maps app, there's also 3D imagery in the Windows 8.1 Maps app. So you can do... I was going to keep saying Maps app. You can do virtual flyovers of cities, and you can also get trivia about those buildings. So you can learn what the architect is, the date of construction, stuff like that. So for the architecture hounds out there, kind of neat.
Yeah, I think it's neat from... I guess you probably want this on your phone, but I think I can see an appeal of walking down the street, seeing a really cool building, and then looking up the details. I don't know how much really, real world use this is going to have, but it's a neat thing.
Know where it would be better? Google Glass. Google Glass would be great.
By the way, not to change topics, but Dana did just post something about the Windows 8.1 RT.
Oh.
Aha. Breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. Breaking
Gizmodo,
news.
what site is that on? Oh, Engadget.
Dana just posted it. She's not working for Gizmodo.
Well, a lot can happen in a day.
The head is, Windows 8 RT looks just like regular Windows 8.1.
So our questions are answered.
Performance hasn't changed.
Can I on a related, totally off-topic thing? Can I
about
tell
Gizmodo?
You
Yes, absolutely.
About Gizmodo.
Mm-hmm.
So we did that panel at the we're not calling it a meetup. At the event. The event on Monday.
Engadget Scheduled event.
We did. It was the media meetup. So TechCrunch and GigaOM and Harry McCracken from Time. And right when I got off the panel, a guy walks up to me. He goes, hey Brian, that was great. How can I intern for Gizmodo?
Guy. Find them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to help you with anything now.
Actually, a bunch of ex-Gawker interns are suing them for not getting paid.
Yeah, I was reading that.
So better get that job internship quick so you can cash in.
Absolutely, get in on that class action.
Get that Gawker money.
Speaking of operating system point releases, Brian spent a little bit of time with a certain OS 10, excuse me. Don't send me an email. OS 10 update.
Too late. I'm getting one ready. I just shot one off.
Man, I'm just going to shut down for the day after that. OS 10 updates. Joe, please go ahead and delete that after the podcast. Brian, you wrote the preview of Mavericks.
Yeah, I'm using it right now. It's neat.
Mavericks without an X.
Yeah. Well, no, it has an X, but it's after the OS.
True.
It's pronounced 10.
So, what are your impressions?
It's a fuller release than I had initially thought.
200 new features.
Or 200 new features. I don't know that I've seen all of them yet. I mean, ultimately, there's nothing really groundbreaking or super exciting. I mean, I think this is probably the evolution that we're going to continue to see of this operating system is really cool stuff coming on iOS first and then moving over to OS 10 because they've moved a lot of the developers over to that side of things, so a lot of the innovation is happening over there. There's some cool stuff baked in. Like I can genuinely see tabs in Finder being useful for me. It's probably going to be less and less useful moving in the future as more and more people keep stuff in the cloud, but it's a neat feature. Tagging is a neat feature too. The mapping system is cool, but ultimately I don't know how useful that is to have on your MacBook because you're.
Yeah, I've been wondering about that too.
It's more of and this actually, I mean, that's another thing. Again, this is a beta, so obviously it's really early. Not all the features are built in. In order to use some of the functionality, you need iOS 7. So in order to actually download a map and send it to your device, you need iOS 7 to do that. So.
Okay, I guess it's fair.
But it's cool. It's got cool 3D imaging on it. Yeah, there's neat stuff. I think I said this before, but it's going to be probably a no-brainer update when it comes out. Yeah,
it certainly seems that way. But no surprises, though. I mean, in terms of anything totally blow you away that you weren't expecting.
Nothing super surprising. It's a pretty straightforward update. I mean, a lot of it is just stripping away some of the Chrome, which is nice. The new multi-monitor support is going to be nice for people like us, so you can have full screen apps open in the same place.
Revolutionary, people.
Yeah. I think Apple invented having two screens hooked up to computers.
I think that's true. I think that is true. That is a true fact, Mr. Hater. So cool. We still don't know exactly release date, but this fall sometime. There's certainly possibility for more surprises in Mavericks between then and now. And then.
I think price might be one of the surprises. It's probably going to be reasonably cheap when it comes out.
I should hope so. Certainly shouldn't be any more expensive than the last one. Yeah. The two Google Play Edition devices that we've been waiting for this summer have launched.
That's actually worth mentioning that 8.1 is a free update. I don't know if we even talked about that, but that's a pretty important part of it.
That is true.
Yeah. Sorry, continue. Two Google devices.
I'm going to talk about some phones now. Stop talking about operating systems, because I know how much you love operating systems, but ultimately we got to talk about some
we're
phones.
still talking about
really,
what
can you do on a phone with that?
I suppose that's very true. So we got the Galaxy S4 Google Play Edition and the HTC One Google Play Edition. I'm going to start by saying I don't like the name Google Play Edition.
I was just going to say the same thing.
Google Edition I like.
Nexus was that a good sound to it?
Okay. Google Play Edition just seems kind of silly to me.
Well, I mean, Google Play just in general is a bad name.
Yeah, I still haven't warmed up to that.
It's weird to kind of have the store be the centerpiece. I don't know why you wouldn't just call it Android.
Yeah,
Android Stock Android. Well, we can't call it
Vanilla. HTC One vanilla.
It's because Google really wants to establish the Google Play brand.
They're still struggling with that.
So,
I mean, are they? I mean, people are buying stuff through it. I don't like what do they need? What do they need?
No. I read a great.
Oh, really?
I wish I could remember who wrote this, but I read a great. It was like almost like a conspiracy theory last year that that because of that Google's response to all the fragmentation in Android is that they're going to promote Google Play as like their flavor of Android, not just for the store, but really like on an overall basis, like to differentiate it from everything else out there. So that if, let's say, they decide at some point that they are going to close source Android and say that we're no longer offering Android for free, or that well, this is where things get a little crazy, because if you think about like what they might have to do with Samsung and other Motorola and other the way that the ecosystem is developing. I mean, you could see them getting to a place where they say we're going to limit this to only a number of OEMs, and that everybody else can keep using the stuff that's out there and develop it, fork it, do whatever they want, but we're going to keep Google Play as our forked version of Android going forward. I wish I could remember all the nuances of the theory. It was really interesting. I'm not saying that necessarily that's going to happen, but it did kind of explain why they're pushing so hard the idea of Google Play.
Intrigue. I like intrigue. Don't get intrigue enough in this industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that when it happens, people are going to freak out and there's going to be a backlash, and then forget about it a week later. I think it's going to be one of those.
Well, it may be something that they do in response to, say, let's say Samsung forks Android, and then to
punish them.
Yeah, or not even to punish them, but just to, I mean, maybe in one way to punish them, but maybe also to better differentiate what they're doing. I mean, one of the biggest complaints that people have about the fragmentation is that, it's sort of that there's Google has not done enough to kind of create at least some sort of standard around Android, and so if they created sort of like what they're doing, right, which is like the Google Play experience of devices, and they said, okay, here's the suite of like Google Play devices that aren't just Android, but these are the ones that we guarantee a certain kind of experience you're going to get,
and like a Nexus device.
Well, like a Nexus device, but also, but what they're saying is like you can get it from Samsung, you can get it from HTC, you can get it from whatever OEMs they partner with, and it creates a certain consistency for developers, for consumers, and solves, in some way, splits the difference on the fragmentation, which says, okay, there's still going to be the crazy stuff that everybody does, that the OEMs in China that do whatever they want with Android, and there's going to be Samsung and HTC which do their own flavors, but we're going to create a Google Play as a consistent experience across these sets of devices, and some of them are going to be Nexus devices, some of them are going to be devices from our OEM partners, and presumably all the Motorola phones will offer it.
Can you imagine,
if they're smart?
Can you imagine if they did that, but only on Motorola devices?
But I think that at least philosophically they want to find a way to have a consistent experience across as many different devices as possible, and not just ones that from the one manufacturer that they own. So this might be the way that they get there, is to say this is the Google Play experience, and it's going to be consistent. Devices are going to upgrades are going to be quicker, like that sort of thing. And if you're outside of that circle, that tent, we can't guarantee what you're going to get.
Do you think there's enough backlash against fragmentation at this point that they feel the need to do that?
I'm not sure that the average consumer cares that much, but I think that Google is increasingly worried about it, and that if it's not a problem now, it maybe becomes a problem down the line, especially as Samsung becomes so powerful.
This is actually an interesting thing that came up in that conversation that we had with was his name Nick from Samsung.
Yeah.
Where he basically said like, well, everybody in this room knows enough about phones that they would want a vanilla Android device, but we're making these skins for people who basically don't know enough about phones.
Yeah. Which I
mean,
you guys know how I feel about TouchWiz, which is it's an abomination.
In some respect, I think basically what he's trying to say is that vanilla Android is too complicated for average people to use it. But it almost sounded like he was saying that most people are too dumb to want that.
And there is some truth in that. I got my mom a Nexus 7 so that she could watch Netflix on the couch or out in the backyard or whatever. Yeah. And it's definitely taken her a little bit of time to get up to speed on the thing versus Windows, which she's been using forever.
Yeah. Well, but do you think TouchWiz would have been?
Yeah, that's what I'm not sure about. I mean, I think getting to settings and that kind of thing, TouchWiz does make easier, at least to the important ones. But ultimately, with the customizations or the improvements that have been made to Android over the years,
I think I think with Ice Cream Sandwich, a lot of the usability has improved a lot. And I think the idea that iOS is dramatically easier to use than Android at this point, I don't believe that. I think people are just so used to iOS that when they use Android, it still feels foreign. But I mean, I still see things on iOS from iOS users, which, I mean, like my mom didn't realize that her phone had Wi-Fi. Well, because it's like, how would you ever figure that out unless you dig around the settings?
Yeah, that's true.
And so it's not just an issue of I mean, saying some of these complexities around the interface are not limited to Android. I think that iOS has them too.
So you got your choice of the two devices. The Galaxy S4 is a 16 gigabyte phone with AT&T bands, basically identical more or less to the AT&T LTE version that's out there now. 16 gig for $649. The HTC One is $599 for a 32 gig device, and again, AT&T flavor more or less. So you can get more storage for less money on the HTC side. Replaceable battery and a slightly faster chip on the Samsung side. So place your bets. Which would you go for, Brian?
Between the one.
Between these two.
Oh, the one.
The one?
Oh.
Peter?
I think the one, but I will say that I think that because Sense 5 is pretty good, that the delta in improvement that you get from going from TouchWiz to stock Android on the S4 is enormous.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that that stock Android, I mean, not that I've used it on the S4, but I have used stock Android on the on a rooted Galaxy S3, for example. And I mean, the speed, responsiveness is better. And I find TouchWiz, I don't even want to look at it. And I know that there's things you could do. I mean, you can run Nova and things like that. So it's not like you're necessarily stuck with what you get if you buy a device with TouchWiz. But I do think that I think that the S4 gains more from getting stock Android than the One does.
I would definitely go
the One's better.
But I still think the One is a better.
It is a nicer hardware. Yeah, I'd go with the Galaxy S4 myself just because removable battery, a little bit better performance, and I don't know. I'm kind of in the Samsung family now, I guess, because I've got my Note. So.
You finally left your wife on.
She doesn't know yet.
Can I say right now, actually, because I think we're gonna run out of stuff pretty early, so now would be a good time for getting questions in.
We should ask for some questions, absolutely. If you got any, feel free to throw them out there.
Because Microsoft, again, was supposed to be the big news of the week, and there just wasn't a lot of news out of it.
Not a whole lot for us, no. So, if you have any questions in chat, feel free to send them our way. We do have a couple more phones we want to talk about, though. And in fact, we got to talk about the new Sprint on Commerce, too. But we're going to talk about the new Sony Xperia Z Ultra. Moving things up to the 6.4-inch size, a 1080p display. Interestingly, this has got the Snapdragon 800 chip in there, too, and a 3,000 milliampere battery. Which makes me wonder how the battery life is going to be on this guy. Big screen, obviously not good for battery life, but big battery too, and the new Snapdragon chip. I'm very intrigued to see how this does on the battery rundown test. I
totally want one.
I'm intrigued by it. It looks nice. It's huge, obviously, but it looks really nice. Super AMOLED. Oh, no, wait, it's not Super AMOLED. What is the display tech? I have to look into that. But we haven't seen that many Snapdragon 800 devices yet. We've done some benchmarks with it, and they all look phenomenal for a performance standpoint. So, definitely looking good.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly Sony ramped up their mobile division.
They had to
going from those terrible Ericsson phones to really making really beautiful devices.
Yeah, I guess this is just an LCD. But again, it should be great performance, should be great battery life. It looks real nice.
And I think 1080p on a screen of this size will work pretty well.
I think so too.
I mean, you'll definitely see a difference between that and like a 720p resolution. It's a bigger difference than you would see at like 4.7 or a 5-inch screen. Obviously, it's big. I mean, I think you have to really think of it as a small tablet rather than a big phone. Obviously, it's comical you get a lot of mileage right out of treating it as a phone. And Sony did come out with that little companion thing for making, like the little Bluetooth thing for making calls, which I think is probably a good idea.
It's not a bad one, yeah.
But like I said, I personally kind of like that size for a tablet, and I'm not sure I could see myself maybe carrying this in my pocket, but I could see myself just carrying this around and using it. And considering how little I talk on the phone, I certainly don't even imagine how often I'd attach it to my. I'd have it, at the side of my head anyway.
Yeah. And the side bezels look pretty thin, so but the top and bottom bezels are actually pretty thick, so it probably is a pretty chunky device. But again, we'll see what it looks like.
Well, they're claiming I think it's at least the thinnest phone
it does look quite thin.
in its class.
And how you define in the bottom bezel? Like
it's 6.5 millimeters, which is pretty awesome.
I mean. And Sony, I mean, they have kind of picked. They've been moving up the ranks in terms of global smartphone sales, absolutely. So they're doing something right.
Yeah, their designs are. I mean, they look beautiful. Yeah. I think the Xperia Z looks nice, and the Ultra now is much the same design language. They got rid of some of the fiddly kind of port covers on the Z, which we didn't really like, which is good. Yeah. No mention of waterproofness though.
How much are they messing with the operating system?
They're pretty minimal with the. I mean, they do some stuff, but not a ton. It's pretty lightweight. I think the challenge is they got to get into market quickly, and I mean it's always an open question which carriers are going to offer this. Yeah. I mean I think that the Xperia Z is just getting to T-Mobile
just now,
and
it's not cheap there either.
How long ago was that announced?
Yeah, I know. There really needs some better partnerships with the U.S. carriers for sure. Yeah, the devices are nice, but that's the big missing piece right now.
Yeah, if they would have started, I think like a year before, it would have been a lot easier. Because now there's like 1, 2, and 3 are pretty solidified.
Yeah, and it was not easy for Nokia to get back into, which we'll talk about. And for Windows Phone to get into carrier rotation as well. But Nokia, obviously, Microsoft had to throw a lot of money at the carriers, I think, to get Nokia phones to be as well or as promoted as they have been. And I don't think that Sony's quite got that pile of cash to make that happen. So Sprint finally has Windows Phone devices, speaking of carrier adoption and support. So we've got 2 that were launched this week on top of build, kind of surprisingly. They just sort of fell out of the sky. The first being the HTC 8XT, which has boom sound. Hooray. But it does not have an HD screen, which is boo. A WVGA device, which is a 4.3-inch WVGA phone, which is a little disappointing. But it's pretty cheap, $100 after rebate.
But I'm not sure why anyone would feel compelled to buy that over
there's
a lot of the other options.
There's probably a reasonably small overlap in that Venn diagram of Sprint users who really want that device.
They want a phone.
But it's like, I feel like if you are discerning enough to opt for the Windows Phone over something else, like why would you not want to just get a better Windows Phone?
Like perhaps the Samsung ATIV S Neo. Samsung continuing to drop Samsung continuing to make incredibly confusing product names. What phone do you have? Oh, it's the ATIV S Neo.
It's the ATIV Active.
The ATIV Active. This is a slightly higher spec phone. Same processor, but a better display on it. It is an HD display, 4.8-inch, a little bit bigger. They didn't actually say how much storage it has in it, but I would be surprised if we're not 8 or 16 gigs, but it does have micro SD expansion, which is something. So $150 for this guy after contract.
Cool.
Yep. And that is it for the week in news, folks.
It's a slow week.
Ran out of news.
I do have a couple questions. Certainly, if you have any other questions in chat, feel free to drop them.
Oh, the retail Ouya hit, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yes, and promptly sold out on Amazon. Yeah. We have the retail units. We're cranking away. And also the Nvidia Shield was delayed. The price got dropped by $50 last week, and then this week the launch was delayed due to a supposed component shortage.
I thought they discovered like some mechanical problem during
Something
QA.
to that effect.
And I think they just started advertising on our site today, actually.
Oops. Somebody didn't.
So we can only say nice things. Because
I will
that's
say
how
this.
it works.
I will say this. It actually is a really nice piece of hardware. Have you played around with it?
Yeah,
it's
I guess
really
I'm trying to
well
play it. It feels like the nicest piece of Android gaming hardware I've ever touched by a mile.
It's just this. Everybody's trying to find their niche right now, and it's like everything with you as a consumer has to kind of fall perfectly into place to want that specific device.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's got a beautiful display. The buttons feel really nice. The control pad feels really nice.
It's a really solid device.
Yeah,
it's going to be really heavy.
It reminds me of the original, the Duke Xbox controller. Not quite that big, but the same kind of rough, rounded shape and solidity too, which I like. But yeah, it's a device that you need to connect ideally to a gaming PC at home, or you're playing Android games, few of which are really sophisticated enough to take advantage of.
That's going to change it really quick as that space is exploding. People are going to start making much nicer Android games.
But due to the delay, we are obviously not going to be reviewing non-finished hardware. So look for the review closer to the actual release of the actual product. Actually, in the future. A couple questions. Let's see. Jackson C-Pen in chat was asking about the Ubuntu mobile OS, if we've heard anything. And we haven't heard anything.
It's been a while.
It's been pretty quiet.
Yeah, we haven't had any updates in a while on that. So unfortunately,
Firefox has been pretty quiet too.
They both have been for perhaps predictable reasons.
Trying to figure out why they're doing what they're doing. Or?
Yeah.
Trying desperately to come up with a business plan.
Well, I'm hopeful that they'll get a much better version of Ubuntu Mobile out.
Yeah,
I mean the stuff that the preview was pretty rough.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this for them. I mean, them versus Mozilla, for example, is just that a lot of people in the developing world are already pretty familiar with Linux and probably Ubuntu by extension. So, it makes sense in that respect to want to port this over to a mobile device, and if you can do it cheap enough.
Yeah,
I mean the smartphone user base is exploding in developing nations at this point.
Exploding everywhere. Regnus3 in chat asking, am I able to upgrade to Windows 8.1 already? And if not, when?
Yes.
There is a preview that you can install now if you want to. It is not the final version of the OS yet, so buyer beware, or downloader beware, I suppose I should say. I don't think they gave us a formal date, but we're expecting sometime to fall. People are suggesting October in chat, and I'd say that's probably as good a guess as anybody's got. So yes, you can download it now if you are feeling adventurous. Anybody feeling adventurous? In the room here?
I'm gonna download the preview and give it a shot.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm tempted to. Yeah, time is always the missing link. Let's see. Boy, how do I pronounce this? Fgetty, I think. PFH Getty on YouTube. This is as good a guess as
PH Getty?
PFH Getty. Does Linux stand a chance in the fight against Windows? I'm going to throw that one right to you, Peter. I mean, is it really a fight anymore?
I'm not sure that it's really a. I mean, it depends on.
This is the year it all turns around.
I mean, I think that. I think if you go back, maybe 12, 13 years, there was this idea that maybe Linux could become a real consumer alternative to Windows, and I mean, if you look at some of the stuff that tried and failed, I mean, like Nautilus, which had actually ex-Apple people and went nowhere. And then, some of the stuff that developed around people thinking that maybe with Red Hat having so much success on the enterprise side, that they would want to make a strong push on the consumer side.
Scaling was exciting when we were thinking about the future of mobile devices too.
But I think what happened was that OS 10 happened, and it actually created a real viable alternative to Windows. I mean, you go back to the year 2000. I mean, it looked like basically it was all Windows all the time, and that something would have to emerge. And so I think that OS 10 kind of, I don't want to say it took the wind out of Linux's sails, but I think it made the need for a successful consumer distro of Linux much less urgent. And so it's that sort of hurt it. But I think that if you look at like Ubuntu, I think it's been pretty successful on its own terms. I think the fact that Canonical has been able to build a real business around giving away Ubuntu, I think says something. And I think that, I mean, I'm using Ubuntu right now, and I love it. I've been using it since 2005, I think. And I mean, off and on, but I like it. I think it's improved a lot. There's some changes that they've made to the UI that I don't like quite as much, but I think that it's gonna not. I don't think it's gonna go anywhere. But I don't really think that we're gonna get to a place where it's more than a few percent of consumers using it.
Yeah, but also keep in mind when you leave the country, you see Linux in places.
Sure, I'm just saying I don't think it's going to be like we're at a place where it's like,
sure,
it's grabbing like 15 or 20% of consumer desktop usage.
Question from James Woodcock in chat. Any news on the cost of Mavericks? Again, no, we don't know the exact cost, but we guess somewhere between $9.99 and $29.99.
I'm going to say either $20 or $30.
Yeah. Could it be 10? Could they go free? Could they react to Microsoft?
I was thinking about it earlier.
Go free?
Does their accounting allow them to go free?
That's a very good question.
I could see it being extremely cheap, especially with the App Store distro that they have right now.
Yeah.
It would.
No manufacturing cost.
I could definitely, I could see it going. I could see $5. I mean, even like you wouldn't even have to go to free, and like in a way, like $5 almost feels better than free, right? That it's only $5.
Yeah.
Maximum of $30. I think we can agree on that.
Because if it's free, you almost in a way like take value away from it, right? In the eyes of the consumer. That's
true, and you certainly set a bad expectation going forward too. And that I think is probably what they'd be more worried about than.
I'm going to say $20 or $30.
No, I would second that emotion. Shower on chat asking about how it was to drive a Ferrari FF this week, and it was pretty nice, I would say. We will have a review of that coming up. There is a surprising amount of tech in cars, as ever, and I'm as ever trying to push that and let folks know about that experience as much as possible. So I'll be talking about that more when the full review goes up. But safe to say, it is a pretty damn good car. If you have some bad roads that you want to go very quickly over, it does very, very well in that regard. Finally, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so you're saying that Ferrari makes a nice car?
Ferrari makes a nice car. Shocker of the week. And V Macchio asks if we can give a shout out to his friend Rick, who's been laid up all summer with a broken ankle.
The answer is no. We'll never mention him on this podcast.
So yes, Rick, please get better. My wife is actually at home suffering from a bruised shoulder that she suffered in a motorcycle crash.
Did she get in a fight with Rick?
No, she was racing on the track with me and had a high side. Unfortunately, landed on her shoulder, and she's now in a sling. So Rick, absolutely rest up. Sorry that you're home. I hope you have air conditioning wherever you are, because it's a good summer for that.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, that was sad when you came into the office and I was like, oh, hey, how are you doing? And you're like, I didn't sleep. I'm like, why didn't you sleep? You're like, I was up last night making a sling for my wife.
Yeah.
Do you have to deal with the bees?
Yes, as a matter of fact, that is on my honey-do list for the weekend.
Literally.
Yes. Puts new meaning in the word honey-do list.
You also have to buy her some buttons.
And on that note, I think we're going to go ahead and call this Engadget podcast to a close. Thank you, gentlemen, as ever, for joining me. It's been a wonderful conversation
Lie down.
about operating systems and phones and bees.
Are we off next week because of the holiday?
I think we are going to be off.
That's probably not going to be
Thursday.
Well, the 4th of July is what day next week?
Thursday.
So I'm not sure there's going to be much to talk about.
I'm
also going to be out of town. I'm also going to be out of town. So
Peter's out, obviously. Maybe Brian and I'll come up with something magical. Maybe we'll sing.
Yeah, for America.
Sing for America. We'll just sing some patriotic songs. But as ever, other than next week, we do record live on Thursday afternoons at 3:30 Eastern Time. We'd love for you to join us live. But if you're listening to the recording, that's pretty good too. So thanks for joining us on the Engadget Podcast. We'll be back maybe not next week, but certainly the week after. Thanks. Bye, everybody.